Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you made it back from last week, I guess. I'm so excited. This is the first episode of season 4, and I'm super excited that I have my friend Mads Torgersen from Microsoft is going to be my guest for my first guest for season 4. I'm really excited to talk to him. I love talking to Mads, but I brought him on specifically so he can talk to you all about what's coming out in .NET 8 and whatever else we get up to talking about. And so with that, if you're watching live, there's a couple people. If you're watching live, please start sending your questions now because they take a minute or two to come in through the chat, and we'll get those questions, your burning questions, answered for .NET 8 or whatever else you want to talk about in the .NET ecosystem. We'll try to talk about, especially since we have somebody as important at Microsoft as Mads is. So with that, I want to get going because I want to make sure I have lots of time for Mads. And so, before I forget, you might wonder sometimes why I pick certain images, to post or show or even use on the show. And you can see here the image here with Mads. You can see the guitar on the right there, my right at least. Well, the reason I'm trying to get positioned, the reason I showed you that is because I have that guitar. See? So that's not a picture of this guitar, but this is a Gibson SG. I've had it since I was in my 20s. There's a really interesting story behind it. And it was made in 1962 or 1972. I'm not exactly sure when, because for some reason, Gibson guitar duplicated some of their serial numbers. My repair guy, who I've been seeing since the 80s to repair my guitars, he says it's probably a 72. So with that, if I told you how much it's worth and how much I told you I bought it for, you'd probably be really surprised, but that's a story for a different day. All right. Well, you know what I've been working on the last few weeks in my downtime or just goofing around when I'm watching TV is I'm really getting into using AI to create images. You guys probably don't know the story, but I've been into art and writing. I wrote my first book in grade school, and I've been doing I was in special art class ever since grade school because I was pretty good at art. And I bring it up because a lot of the top software engineers that I know personally are also good at something very creative, art, music, writing, things like that, because we come up with stuff from our imagination. That's what programmers do. We solve problems with our imagination. And so one of the things I do to keep my creative juices flowing is to work on my photography and my art and guitar playing every weekend and all those things. It kind of helps me keep those things going. So I've been really getting into creating images from AI. It's kind of frustrating because I've learned the hard way. The more you tell it, the less it does. So you can't be very specific with creating these images, but I try hard to get out of it what I want, and I'll show you some of those now. So here's a peace sign. I'm not sure what I'm going to use for that, but I'll show you some other things I am going to use that I've been creating. So I created a C# spaceship. I created a record flying in outer space, a microphone, a .NET wooden clock I created a .NET 8 mechanical thing with fire coming out of the back. I created the image, the black and white image there for my book I'm working on right now. So I'm using it, for not only to be creative, but also to use it in, a lot of things I write and talk about. And to tell you, like I'm even using it to create memes. So here I wanted to create I wanted a meme of a angry software development manager, or sorry, not angry, stressed out software development manager. And it created one for me sitting in front of a laptop with a cup of coffee on his desk. And then I added some words to it to create a meme. Or actually, this is for a new article that's coming out. And then I also created one for Halloween to wish you all happy Halloween at the end of the month. And so I created that. Yeah, I told it I wanted a pumpkin patch with guitar in it and some bats and some ghosts. I thought I told it, but I don't see it in this one. But anyway, that's what I've been doing. I really like it. I know it'll get better. Hopefully it'll get better at doing what I wanted to instead of struggling with it and having to regenerate an image hundreds of times to get out of it what I want. But you know, it's the beginning, so it's pretty cool. Anyway, all right. I wanted to share really quick season 3 stats. We don't have all of them yet because we don't have last week's show with Dylan in here, but drum roll, season 3 had over 210,000 viewers. Woo-hoo! I think that's pretty cool for a little show that I put on twice a month now. And I had a lot of awesome guests on last season. All my guests are awesome, but one of my longtime friends, since I've known him since the 90s. I used to play guitar with him at the top of the Marriott Hotel in San Francisco in the 90s and early 2000s. And so the most watched episode, I can't even believe these numbers, Simon. The most watched episode of last season was Carl Franklin with over 37,000 views. Wow, I'm amazed. You know, I actually, after I looked at these numbers today, I was going, wow, if I just had $1 for every viewer, I wouldn't have to work full time anymore. Oh, it's. Oh, well, I won't dwell on that. But anyway, I want to thank all of my great speakers. All of my great guests from last year. I had a great time talking with all of you and bringing you into other people's homes and into my home, because this is my outlet, since I don't speak as much anymore, to, connect with other people at my level. So I want to thank all my speakers. I keep saying speakers, guests. Who've been on my show all the seasons, but especially last season. I want to also thank Mahesh for doing this show. I also want to thank, of course, my awesome producer, Simon, who does an awesome job, no matter where he is in the world, to help do this show, to bring it to you guys. So if you're watching live, please send a thank you to Simon, because I couldn't do the show without him. So, all right. I also want to promote my latest book, Surviving the Technical Interview, which is available on Amazon right now. I hope you pick up a copy of it. I have a new copy of my Code Performance book up there too, so I hope you get that one too. I need to save up for retirement, so I hope you go pick up a copy. I hate to say this, but this is typically the time of year when companies start either slowing down hiring or starting to lay off people. So you really need to be prepared for that now. So I hope you go pick up the copy of my book, because, quite frankly, I use all the tips in my own book when I interview, and that's why it's there. And so I hope you find some use out of it too. So I also want to promote really quick my Spargin projects. I have my Spargin open source libraries and NuGet packages that I'm working on the next edition of that right now. I think it comes out next month, I think. I'm not too sure. I have to look at the calendar. I forget these things. And I also want to promote my Spargin dev tool that I use every day when I'm coding. I just last weekend, I recorded a video demo of exactly how to use this tool and exactly why I use it. And so I hope you go to my website and go look for that. and check out the demo and to see exactly how it's how to use it. And actually, I wanted to make the video to show you exactly why I use this every day when I'm coding, and so I hope you get some use out of it too. It's free. Why not use it? It'll save your source code, believe me, and it'll help you debug and things like that better with Visual Studio. So, okay. With that, I want to bring on Mads Torgersen. Mads is a lead designer of the C# programming language and a principal architect at Microsoft. I love short bios. Welcome, Mads.
Oh, thank you. I'm super excited to be here with you. It's not that long ago that we got to spend a little time in person, which before that it had been forever.
No, before COVID.
Yeah, before COVID. Well, yeah.
Well, before COVID. I think the last time I saw you was 2018, I think. And then
that could very well be.
Yeah, and then you and I hung out at the Copenhagen Developers Festival last month, or at the end of August, early last month. I really enjoyed the festival. How about you?
Yeah, I thought it was great. It was a wonderful format, I think, for a conference. There was great music, which both you and I like, but also they were sort of like there was a space to hang out and interact with lots of people and with speakers and attendees in a way that was, relaxed and informal. And I think it was just, I had so many good conversations, and I had a great time hanging out with you and some of the other speakers. So yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I want to thank you again for hanging out and having a one-on-one conversation, with me at the festival when we had some downtime, and it was great to catch up with you and to find out what's happening, not only with you, but the .NET world and all those kind of things. And I really miss talking to people like you, and especially people that I consider my friends. And so, what was your favorite part of the festival?
Oh, I'm one of those people who get immediately, a mental block when somebody asks me what was your favorite thing?
There's so many good things happened, right?
Yeah, somehow I can't think of anything that happened when I get asked that particular question. I don't know, it's my particular brain makeup or something, but I can't point you to a single most favorite thing. There were many. There was a very lovely Swedish astronaut that gave a wonderful talk. It just made me want to go straight to space.
I know.
And there were talks about mental health and about standing up for yourself in the workplace and so on. And so those weren't necessarily my all-time favorite. There was great technical stuff as well. But one of the things that I really love about those is that it feels like we as an industry are getting better and better at talking about other things than just the tech.
Yes.
I say this as a guy who talks mostly about the tech.
Yeah.
But and I thought, I was just thinking of it when you were doing your intro here and you were talking about your two books. One is about writing efficient code, and the other is about things that aren't technical per se, but it's about how to it's about the environment we're in and how to do well and thrive in a bigger sense. And I think I'm so happy that we are bringing these things together, and we're getting. I feel like we're getting better as a culture, if you will, at talking about soft topics.
Yeah, and I wrote an article a long time ago about I wished conferences would do more of those kind of talks, right? And so I'm impatient, and so when I wrote it, I kept thinking that things will just change, and of course that's not the way it works. And so yeah, I'm glad these kind of things are coming more to the forefront. I'm glad that people are willing to get up and talk about difficult things in front of people. That's not necessarily tech, especially the one woman who talked about mental health, right? I really liked her talk because she actually shared a couple terms that I didn't know about before. And there was one thing that, I think I struggle with, and she put a name to it. And I go, oh, that's what it's called. I was wondering what that was, right? I thought it was just me, right? And that's why I'm really glad that, not only that people talk about that, but people are brave enough to get in front of a room full of software engineers and who typically don't listen to those kind of talks very much, to be brave enough to get in front of them, and talk about something that's not only important to them, but probably something they're struggling with, right?
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
and they're being vulnerable. That's what I'm trying to say. They're
Yeah.
being vulnerable, which is, I think, is really, whenever I see people do that, I was going, wow, that's just really great. And I always try to, when they do something like that, I always try to make it a point to go up to them and thank them, for doing that, kind of talk, because I know it was difficult probably for them.
Yeah, and it serves sort of several purposes, because yes, you're getting concrete information out of the talk, but it's also, whenever a speaker gets up and shares like that, it gives everyone permission.
Mhm.
It gives everyone more space to be themselves. And many
Right.
people, like, I have ADHD. I didn't even know for a
Yeah.
long time, and then
Yeah.
I thought I must be the only one, right? And then you're the realization we're all in this together. We're all, like, I think many of us in the tech sector, we're interestingly wired. That's part of how we end up here in the first place.
Right.
And there are we end up in many workplaces that have, cultures that are lacking in various ways, and are making it harder than necessary to sustain a happy work life. So I think bringing these things to the fore helps everyone and gives everyone permission to recognize their own struggles, and it gives them words to apply to them, and it gives them perhaps courage to reach out and connect to others. So I'm really, this is just such a wonderful turn in our industry.
Yeah, and they even had I think the first talk I went to was the guy who talked to everybody about how he builds guitars. He builds his own guitars. He built that one he played with, right? That looks like the logo for Visual Studio, right? He made it in the shape of a Visual Studio logo, and he showed, he talked to us all how he built it. But to me, as a guitarist, I think that's awesome. But he also tried to relate it back to how that relates to software engineering, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, of course, me being a musician and everything, I just love that talk, because to hear all the work he has to build a guitar, which why I don't build guitars, because they're really, to get it right is really, really difficult, right? And with all the intonations and the spacings and I don't have the patience to do something like that. And but then relate it back to software engineering, and then you had talks on space and all kinds of different talks, and we had beer and wine and food every night and music every night, and if you didn't want to go to a talk, you could go hang out and play Nintendo, or play ski ball. Is that what that's called? It's the thing where you slide down with the salt. What's that called?
Shuffle something, or
shuffleboard, or I forget what they call it.
Yeah.
You could play that. You could make a hot air balloon and fly it up in the air, and that was it. It was really fun. But my favorite, I loved going to that conference, especially since it was the first time they did it, and it was the first time in Copenhagen for me, and to learn more about your country, Denmark, where you're from. But my favorite part was, I was really, really looking forward to, connecting with you and Carl and Richard and all the people I know, but then, the other thing that happened was I met a lot of new people, which is really fascinating to get to know them and talk to them, not only about software engineering, about their home countries and things like that. And the cool thing is, I was kind of worrying about, my next conference is going to be next month in Lithuania at the Build Stuff conference. And I was kind of worrying going, oh, I'm not going to know anybody there. But guess what? A lot of those people that I met for the first time in Copenhagen are going to be there. Right.
Yeah.
So I already have a built-in people I already know. So that's going to be fun.
And I noticed you did a really cool thing before that, before the conference, which was that you knew you had extra time before the conference. You reached out on the speaker communications ahead of time to find people to hang out with and to go explore with. I think that's a really good tip in general, like to the audience as well. When you're going places, if there's any way to communicate with the other attendees, and just overcome their shyness and ask out who would like to go explore this or that place in the city we're all going to, or something like that. It's rare that, I mean, on average, we're with other people much less after the pandemic than we were before. Just use those opportunities to get to know people, to hang out, to explore together. It's much more fun. Yeah, it's fun to explore alone, but it's much more fun when you're with someone.
I like it so much with somebody else. And I can tell you, if I didn't hook up with Selena the first full day I was there, and, Selena and I, she's from New Zealand, and, her and I walked all around Copenhagen for like 12 freaking hours, on Monday. And I can tell you for sure that, if I wasn't with her, I wouldn't have seen as much of Copenhagen. Right. But just going by myself. And then the next day I was wiped out, from that. And so in the afternoon, I went over to Trevelli Gardens, the world's oldest amusement park or something like that. And with another new person, Dominica, and two other new people I didn't know. And they went on rides, and we, Dominica and I had dinner there. And it was really great to get to know those people. And now I have new friends, in New Zealand and Poland and, all these places. So that's really what I look forward to, is connecting with people and fellow software engineers.
Yeah. I mean, if we're coming right down to it, you and I became friends that way. I mean, we knew each other a little before. Yeah. But we spent a couple of days together exploring.
2 full days in Delhi.
And that is where our friendship started, right?
Yeah. And everybody listening, if you wonder why I talk or try to get people to talk to people they don't know at events like conferences and user groups and things like that, this is why, right? This is why I try to get you guys to come out of your shell and to talk about, talk to people you don't know, right? Because to me, that's where things really open up. And you learn different things from different people from different parts of the world. And this is why I try to get you guys to come out of your shell when you're at conferences. But because that's how I get the most out of it, is that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Because all the sessions are usually recorded anyway. So, but I can't record the interactions with people, right? So that's what I focus on whenever I'm at a conference.
Yeah. You get to know people. You learn a lot. I certainly feel like every time I go to a conference, I learn a lot more from the side conversations and from the talks. Like at some conferences, I barely make it to the talks. It's not because I'm not interested. It's just that, as you say, the content is a little more reproducible sometimes. So I also do want to say, like, a really good talk that is experienced live is, even when you see the video of it, it's not the same. So that's another reason too. But those personal human interactions and the things you learn, both, as a human, but also as a professional. Like, I have to go back and build the next version of C#. I'm really, really interested in what people do and just what their thoughts are. It's not that everyone I meet, that I interview them about, or what do you use in C# and what do you think should change? And it's not that, but I just hear, that's part of how I hear about what happens in industry and what's on people's minds that can somehow filter back into informing my day job as well.
Yeah, and that's that's why I like the people at Microsoft. Not everybody does this, but the people who get out of the Microsoft bubble, right? Because you all live in a bubble, right? And you don't really hear a lot about the real world. And this is the way for you guys to do that, is to get out and talk to people at events and stuff like this, because people will come up and talk to you. I'm sure I don't even want to hear about some of the stuff that people probably complain to you about, but yeah, that's how you get, that's because I mean, you have the MVP program, you have the partner program, you have other programs where you get some, feedback directly from people, but that's not necessarily the masses, right? And so getting out and going to, a conference, and you go to a lot of them, this is how you get in touch with the people who are actually using your language.
I hope I will be going to a lot of them again. It's actually just kind of starting up for me after the pandemic. And I don't have as much on my calendar as I used to on that front. One thing that I do regret a little bit, and I want to get into more, is that the conferences I do go to tend to be the ones that, are relatively well funded, that can just say, hey, why don't you come over? We'll give you like a plane ticket and a hotel room, and I don't have to haggle with Microsoft about paying my expenses.
Yeah.
But that also means that there are only certain geographies where that's really possible. It's essentially North America and Europe.
Yeah.
And so I feel like definitely I'm starting to feel a little bit of a blind side for me is other continents, Africa, South America, much of Asia. And I don't really have enough of a plan in place yet to go to those places more, because I think the kinds of feedback you get and the kinds of insights you get are different from place to place.
Yes, they're very different.
And living standard of living and how the industry works there and so on. So that's still a blind spot for me. It was actually the pandemic was a bit helpful in an odd way for me there, because all of a sudden everything turned virtual, and the distance to events became equalized across the whole globe. And I ended up going to more events and speaking to more user groups and so on that were not in the places I usually end up coming in person. So that's something to consider for myself, I think, going forward.
I'm glad you do that. It's important. I think it's an important job, especially as somebody at your position at Microsoft, that you need to get out and talk to people, the normal developers, right? And see what and see what they're struggling with. So speaking of that, we should probably get to we only have a few questions. So anybody watching live, please post your question. Anything you want to ask us about, especially about .NET 8, because that's coming out next month. I think it's the 14th or something. I heard Scott Hanselman say it's coming out on the 14th. Is that true? Or can you still not confirm or deny that?
No, it's that's a date. It could be the 14th of November.
Yeah.
Is that the first day of .NET Conf? I think it is. Then that's probably when we ship. Unless if everything goes right, I hope I'm not.
That's probably it.
Secret, So we're a bit more than a month out. We have everything pretty much in the box. I know there are a few last minute scrambles, but it should be good to go. And that's a pretty decent version of C# 12 that we've lined up. That now that we do C# every year, it won't be chock full, like wall to wall of new features. That'll be too much. But we have a good mix of small little improvements and fixes, or like specialized things, and then we have a couple of features that are broad and I think very interesting to nearly every developer out there. So I'm very happy with what we have.
Yeah, you know me, I've been doing extensive benchmark testing against .NET 8, and ever since the previews started coming out, and I have to say I'm very, very impressed with the performance improvements. I mean, some things have I'm dramatically changed in performance. Some things actually slowed down a bit. I'll see what happens when the final RC comes out next week. But most everything has sped up, and some of it being just huge amounts.
Yeah.
And and whenever I see those kind of metrics, I always think, wow, if C# has got to be one of the most performant languages out there. I mean, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I mean, I don't do any, but it's, you guys have been doing such a, Stephen and you all have been doing such a great job at, getting, making it even more and more performant, because, one thing, I talk about, especially when it comes to performance, and yeah, maybe this is only saving 100 nanoseconds, but that adds up, especially when you're in the cloud. And when you're in the cloud, everything gets charged based on how long it's being executed. So we have to worry about performance. If you're going to put anything in the cloud, you need to be worried about performance, right? Because that just turns into more cost for your company.
That's true. I mean, you're right about both things. Like, the performance is really all about the aggregate. Like, it's rare. Well, after there's usually one or two like super low hanging fruits when you start profiling your app that are like, okay, I just did something dumb there and I can go and fix that. But after that, everything's about, is the aggregate performance good enough? And it becomes like 100 little things. And many of those things are actually under our control as the ones who build the stack, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of our opportunities, I think, that's somewhat unique to .NET, or that not every stack has, is that because Microsoft is driving every layer of the stack, and we can coordinate and kind of get synergy between our efforts there. That gives a different, a less kind of siloed approach to performance improvements. We can improve the core libraries. Sometimes if something they do often isn't fast enough in the runtime, we can go and speed that up in the runtime and give that some love. We can, if something allocates in a certain pattern, we can improve the garbage collector for that pattern. And from the language point of view, we try not to optimize your code too much actually in the C# compiler, because if the result gets too complicated in IL, then it's harder for the JIT or the AOT compilers to optimize those. It's better if they can clearly see your code patterns, so we can kind of optimize for that. And then finally, in the language itself, one thing that we found has been a really great long-running collaboration with the runtime and the libraries is that we've added more and more low-level features to C# to essentially replace unsafe code or places where you would interrupt to a lower-level language like C++ or something,
right?
And put safe language features in at the lower end where many people might not use it. But because we can use safe C# features to implement our frameworks and libraries more efficiently and more safely, everyone benefits indirectly from those language features. So we have a whole little corner of the language that sort of, it's a little bit experts only. We still try to make it nice and coherent and so on, but not everybody will want to go there all the time, where we use more spans and try to avoid allocation, for instance. Just it being there in C# still helps everyone. So that whole, I think that whole collaboration across all the layers is part of what you're seeing when you, at the end of the day, when you do your numbers, you're seeing the result of that.
Yeah. I would, venture to say that most of the newer .NET developers probably have never, written a call against the Windows API, right? Because you guys have done such a great work. I mean, it wasn't as great in the beginning of .NET, but you have done you've done a lot of work to bring those calls, and make them safe within .NET, so people don't have to do an unsafe call and worry about crashing an entire system because they forgot one little thing they created the type that you have to send to the API slightly wrong, and boom, the whole thing blows up, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember back in the 90s doing API calls, and it was always, oh my God, I hope it works, hope I don't blow anything up and bring down the machine kind of thing. But now, we hardly have to, I hardly write API calls at all anymore. The only time I write API calls these days is when I'm trying to do something that you guys haven't exposed, right?
Yeah.
For example, one of the things that I have exposed in my open source project is a way to copy files with notification, right?
Okay.
Which you can't do in .NET, right? And when you copy a file in .NET, you go copy it from here to there. But if you want to show the progress of that to the user, you can't do that with .NET. You have to drop down and do the API call. And so those are the kind of things that, I try to use what's in the framework, but if I'm trying to eke out something that's just not there, then I'll break down and go down to the API call. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully that's rarer and rarer. Yeah.
Yeah. So welcome everybody from Dubai and everywhere else you're joining from. There's one question I want to get a follow-up on, and that is, why can't I write public overside async? Do you know what that is?
It's probably meant to say override.
Override. Yeah. So
override async. Why you can write it?
Well, yeah. Why don't you rewrite your question about that one, and we'll go to the next one. Do you have any tips on decoupling?
Oh, that can mean many things, but
Yeah, no.
I mean, there's certainly okay. I can take this to be a question that I can take in a direction that I find interesting.
Sure.
C# is a strongly tied language, and it has what people sometimes call a nominal type system, which as opposed to structural, right? And so if you an example of a language with a structural type system is TypeScript, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So with a nominal type system, what that means is that you implement interfaces, but you are only ever considered to match an interface if you explicitly said, I implement that interface.
Mm-hmm.
You could have an interface that would fit your type perfectly, but if you didn't, or if whoever wrote that type rather didn't say that they implement the interface, maybe they didn't know about it, they're from a different stack or whatever, then those types are incompatible. Mm-hmm. And that leads to, that among other things, leads to somewhat of a lack of ability to decouple code. Things have to have more dependencies so that the right interfaces can be implemented. Things that shouldn't know about where those interfaces are have to know about them so they can implement them, so that a consumer of that library can use them together.
Right.
That's like a challenge in most nominally typed programming languages. And we've been looking for years and years on other ways that we can help bridge that gap. And we're looking at something that I've talked a little bit about sometimes that we call extensions, that are essentially extension methods to the nth degree, like taking that idea to the extreme, where just maybe we can get to the point where you can essentially, you have the interface. I should put my hands within the screen here. The interface, the type that doesn't know about the interface, you want to use them together. You want to apply that interface to that type after the fact. Well, maybe we can have extension interfaces where you actually make a new type declaration that says something about the old type, namely that it implements this interface. In addition to adding like extension members and so on, you can add an extension interface implementation. Now we talked about the runtime before. That's something that can be gnarly to get to work right with the runtime. And we might have to do runtime features for it or not get, or make some compromises on semantics or something. But that is a thing that we're looking at so that people don't have to do desperate or unnatural things to get things to work well together from a type perspective.
Yeah. Well, cool. I hope that answered your question. we were talking earlier about collection expressions. Do you want to? You say that's kind of like the hot new thing in .NET 8. Do you want to explain what collection expressions are and maybe show something? If
Sure.
you have a second.
We could definitely. I mean, we could go to code for a bit. I do happen to have a Visual Studio open. There you go. So there's a couple of different features we could show in this piece of code, but specifically talking about collection expressions, I love this feature, and I hope you will. I hope you'll understand why when as we get into it here, because what we have today is that creating collections in C# is actually a very messy business, right? You have, depending on what kind of collection you want to create, you simply have different syntax and different things you need to remember to do. Like here I have a constructor that takes an array of grades, and so when I pass that in, I have to new up an array, and there's a syntax for that. But if it was a different, and actually this other constructor, when it calls to pass an empty array, well, if they read your book, they will probably know to call array.empty instead of newing up their own empty array, because an empty array can't change, right? It's mutable, and it's a waste to allocate new ones again and again and again. And indeed, the array API provides the canonical one for you that you can reuse. So you should always remember to do this, or your code will be less efficient. Okay, I think I learned that. But now now they go and change the API to be a list of grade instead, for instance. Let's just say that. Okay, now the code that's calling it is busted.
Right.
And it's not that I'm saying you should go and change your signatures all the time, but it's just like, why does it have to be different for different collection types? Now I can use collection initializers, and I can say new. I can do this syntax now. I don't have to explicitly say the type.
Oh, you have to say array. Yeah.
That's been around for like a few releases that you can that you can infer the type for a new expression at least. So now these curly braces mean something different. They mean call add on the new collection with every element. Okay. And down here, of course, I can just say list.empty, right? That'll work. Right. Yeah. No, of course it won't, because list of grades is not a thing, because you can't actually mutate an empty list, and so you actually have to create it from scratch. And I guess I can remember that now. Of course, if you go and say immutable array instead here, which is a fancy type that can't be mutated, well, of course, that does not work with object initializers, but it looks like it works.
It does.
Because immutable array has an add method, and it takes elements. But because it's immutable, the add method works differently. It returns a new immutable array with the extra element added, because it can't change the old one.
Right.
But collection initializers don't know about that. They'll just call it and throw away the new collections, and after you're done, it'll still be empty. This actually does the wrong thing, even.
Yeah.
It's even more devious. And the upshot of it is it should not be like that. Like, you should not A, have to remember all these different syntaxes, and B, have detailed knowledge about what's the most efficient way to create this particular kind of collection and fill it up with elements. Like, that should not be something you have to go around and remember as a developer. You should have a simpler life. And this is where collection expressions come in, because the collection expression, now finally we get a thing with square brackets, an expression that starts with square brackets. This is a collection expression. It's just square brackets with comma separated things in it. The one down here, we can just put an empty one. And it's target typed. You can't explicitly say what type it is, but when you pass it to something of a given type, you will get a collection of that type. So in this case, we'll get immutable arrays. And collection expressions they're sort of highly customizable by the target type. So if you want to say, here's my most efficient way of getting created with some elements, the target type can provide it's through an attribute. It can point you to the right method to call, and the compiler will call that. And if not, then the compiler will look for usual collection things. It will look for add and add range, and look for ensure capacity, to pre-allocate room in the collection if there's that, and look for copy to in the case if you can have what we call spreads in here. Like we could have like whole collections that are being spread in. I think I have Dustin's grades here somewhere. I'll go and steal those grades to Dustin. And so that's like a whole collection of grades with the dot there. It gets spread in, they all get added.
Wow, that's cool.
Might choose to call copy to on that thing to get them into the other, and so on. The compiler is free to do what it thinks is most optimal here, in order, as long as it ends up evaluating these expressions left to right, so it guarantees that. And then other than that, it just guarantees that it will create one of the a collection of the desired type using the tools that it finds on that type.
Yeah.
So so that gives you like
a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, a unified syntax that's pretty powerful too. You get the spreads. That's a really nice addition compared to like collection initializers or array initialization syntax from before. But also, we can do the job of making it efficient. And the goal for this is that in all but the most pathological cases, what you do should be as efficient. What we do should be as efficient as what you would have done, and often more efficient, because we can do gnarly things that are involve stack allocating spans or whatnot, and we will. That are things that, yes, you could do them too, using all these lovely new safe low-level features in C#, but your code would look ugly and it would be harder to maintain, and it would require more knowledge of the next person to read it and so on. Instead of getting code that's harder to read to get better performance, you get code that's easier to read and get better performance. That's the goal of this. It's like a win-win-win feature.
Yeah, I like that, especially since the writing I'm doing right now for my book. I'm talking a lot about the proper way that Microsoft at least recommends to create public APIs. And, one of the things they're saying, which I have to say I've been doing it wrong and right, just because I'm kind of lazy sometimes, or depending on the work. But, I would think most of us use list or array, where, those, especially list, is not the best thing to be like passing into parameters and also exporting from methods either, right? For API purposes, to make them more useful to everybody. And so I've been doing a lot of writing about that recently, where and if you really think about it, usually when you're being passed a collection of grades, they should be immutable, right? These are the grades, right? It's not a list that can be changed. This is the array of grades. That's it. So we should be using more of these either immutable types or lower level types, right, to make them more useful for everybody using the API, not force somebody into using a list or force somebody into using an array, or things like that, right? So
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think and the fact that anytime you pass a collection to someone else to give, it's for the purpose of giving them the elements. The collection should be immaterial, right? But if you pass them a collection that is mutable, then you run the risk of them mutating it.
Right.
That goes all the way back to arrays. They can fuck with your elements.
Right.
And if you're using it for something else or passing it to others, then you get these very unfortunate effects, and it's even worse, of course, if you have concurrency involved.
Yeah.
So, but that pushes a lot of people to do defensive copying, and so that was kind of how you dealt with this in the old days, right? Okay, I'll make a copy of the whole array and pass to you, so you can mutate it all you like. I'm not going to be harmed by it. But then they will get the array and they will say, I wonder if it's being used for other things as well. I should make a copy of it. So you end up having defensive copying twice sometimes on these, because the two sides don't trust each other. And immutable data types are really the right thing for that. And in fact, we're going to, with this feature, it's going to also, it already works also with sort of the standard collection interfaces, some of which are read-only, you know, they don't have mutation members on them. So things like INumable, I read-only less
right.
T, right? And
Right.
you can actually use directly as target types. And then we will decide on a type, a concrete type to create for you. And we will guarantee that type, that for the read-only interfaces, the type we create is not mutable. So you will not, so people who take it don't have to worry that it'll change while they're looking at it. And people who pass it won't have to worry that others will mutate it.
Right.
So that's, so the thing you bring up is actually another thing that this feature will help people with just out of the gate.
Yeah. And even that brought up, you know, even in my book, I stress that, you know, I there's one code analyzer thing that kind of recommends not to use the ref keyword on parameters. And because if you really think about it, it doesn't do anything, right? The ref keyword really doesn't do anything. You still can mutate that object that's being sent in if you're using ref, and that's probably not that's not probably not what you're going for, right?
Right. I mean, unless it is, in which case ref is great. If you want to send a struct that and that other people to a method that you want to mutate it, and then you want to observe the result on your struct after, then that's what the ref is for. But otherwise, you should think about using out and in parameters and returns and so on. So even if you want to pass by reference, there are ways to do it that protect you in the different directions that you want to be protected.
Well, we're running out of time, so I'm not going to be able to have you show what I really wanted you to show today, which is a feature that's not in C# and might be coming on that you want to have in C#. Do you want to explain really quick what that is in like 1 or 2 minutes?
Yeah, we touched on it briefly earlier about the decoupling, and the idea there really is that we're looking at a feature that we call extensions that can be used to write, you can think of it as lightweight wrappers around other types that add functionality. So you can have like explicit extensions where, oh, here's a new type with a new name that is actually just like putting some extra functionality on the old type there. That's one way of doing it. So you can have JSON string that really is just a string, but it adds, parse methods and so on. And then there's implicit extensions, which are really sort of the supercharging of extension methods, where an implicit extensions just adds new members to existing types, except they don't have to just be like fake instance methods anymore. They can be fake static methods or indexers or operators, or, the list goes on. Now you can really enhance with all the function members you like, and perhaps even interfaces. That's sort of like
that, when you showed that in Denmark, I was going, wow, this is really, really cool. And I wish it was in the language now, but I guess we'll have to wait for a couple more versions, maybe.
I'm really good at selling something in the way that it looks like it's almost done, but it is really isn't.
I know. That's why you had to use a PowerPoint slide.
Yeah, I had to go to slides. It was just, if I typed it out in Visual Studio, it would just be a sea of red squiggles.
Yeah. The guy did write back, why can I write public override async and not get a compiler time error instead of a warning? I'm still not sure, but
I think I'm not sure why you wouldn't. Maybe I don't understand the scenario well enough. I think it depends on whether you're void returning or you're task returning. If you have a task returning virtual method, then overriding that, it's up to you whether you want to use async or not. Like you can implement it manually and just return the task yourself, or you can put async on and then have the compiler produce the task. But that should be your choice as you override. So I don't know if that answers the thing in your mind. I hope it does.
Yeah, I hope that answers it. If not, reach out to Mads or myself, and we'll try to get a clear answer for you, because I want to make sure we answer everything, and I think we have. So with that, I probably have to let you go, because Simon is probably wants to go to sleep as usual, and he's in a hunkered down in a hotel room right now, and so the last question I want to ask you, I'm not sure if I asked this when we were in Denmark, but it's the new question I'm asking. The people who've been on the show before, and that is, what brings you happiness in your tech career?
What brings me happiness in my what?
In your tech career, in your career.
My tech career. People. It's that simple.
Yeah.
We can elaborate on that, and collaborating with smart people and all that, but it's really at the end of the day, it's people.
Yeah, I agree, and I love remote work, but that's the one thing I do miss about remote work, as I'm not around my peers as much anymore in person, and that's the thing I really miss about. If there's one thing I miss about remote work, that's it.
Yeah. I find that I do hybrid essentially. And it's for that reason, as I mentioned, I have ADHD, and that provided an excellent explanation for why I always had trouble focusing on like deep work when I was at a workplace. So I do that at home now. And then I go into the office a couple of days a week for the people stuff and those interactions that you can only partly substitute with online interaction.
Yeah. Are you guys still using the team rooms?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you guys were.
Enjoy it. I think it's great for some people if you're working on the same stuff.
Yeah.
But
it can be distracting, I guess.
It's too distracting for me.
Yeah.
And I just settle on. I've found peace with the fact that when I'm in the office, I don't get anything written, and I don't get any code done, and that's just not what I'm there for,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being my first guest for season 4. I hope season 4 is watched by more people than the previous seasons, but we'll see. I'm working really hard for all of you out there. I'm working really hard on bringing a guest on who can talk about .NET 8, from now until the end of the year. So I'm working on that. I'm still working on it, and hopefully I'll get that to you all because I want to, because this is a long-term support. I want to make sure we get the word out about all the great stuff coming out in .NET and C#. So thanks so much. You can hang out afterwards or go hang out with your family. I know you enjoyed spending time with your family up there in the Pacific Northwest, and I hope to get up there. If they have an MVP summit next year, I'm definitely coming for sure, so we can hang out some more.
That would be lovely. Yeah. For now, I'm gonna go and have my COVID shot. So
I got mine. I got mine 2 days ago.
Okay. Are you feeling good now, or is it still kind of affecting you?
I didn't get COVID. I just had a cold that lasted like a freaking month. And so when I got my COVID booster Thursday, I also got a flu shot, which I forgot to get before I went to Denmark. So I wanted to make sure, before I go to Lithuania, that I'm all boosted up, and so I don't get sick. I don't want to get sick while I'm there. I don't want to get sick when I come back, but definitely not when I'm there.
Yeah, that's me too. I'm heading out soon again, so I need to be boosted up.
Where are you going?
Poland next.
Poland.
Places in Europe.
Yeah, I want to go to Poland. I hope I met that guy who runs a conference there, and I hope to get out there next year. I wanted to go there, especially. I kind of, because I miss the Ukraine and everything. I kind of want to see just kind of firsthand how they've been helping the Ukrainian people there, because I know they took in so many refugees from this terrible war they're dealing with, and so okay.
Yeah, I'm curious to see that.
Yeah. Well, have fun. I hope you have a great time there.
I hope so too, and I really look forward to it. It's been great talking to you, Dave.
Yeah, it's great talking to you too. I can't wait to have you back on the show again. You know, I'm going to be hitting you up, so be ready.
Guess I'll see you next year.
Okay. Thanks so much, Mads. Wow, that was such a great talk. Mads is such a great person, and I just have such a great time talking to him and about life and programming and kids and all kinds of things. And so I'm really happy that he was able to start season 4 of my show. So thanks, Mads. Have a great time with your family. Get your booster shots. I also have, speaking about performance, I do have a performance section on my website you can go check out. And right now, I'm working on updating those articles with information from .NET 8. So I hope you'll check that out and keep a watch on that. You can subscribe to the website so you can learn all the new things. It doesn't tell you when I'm updated something, but it will tell you when I do something new. So check back often for the .NET 8 stuff. I'm working as hard as I can. So here's some geek humor. Should we let users create memes on our app? 1 second thought, it's not a good idea. 2 months later, have we shipped that meme feature yet? I've been through this so many times where, some management person tells me to, they want something and then they don't want it. And then they ask me why it's not done. This is real life in our world. I thought that was funny. As usual, I hope you will help me help the kids from the slums in Delhi, India, and donate to the Voice of Slum or to my GoFundMe page. The kids, these are video from my when I visited last October to the Voice of Slum. And, these kids really need your support to help train them, feed them, clothe them, all these kind of great things that these Dave and Chandy do. That's Dave and Chandy standing right next to me there. They do an awesome job. And, I hope you'll take a little bit of your time out and give them whatever you can. I know they'll appreciate it because they do an awesome job. So please help me help them. We have to think about the Ukraine. We're just talking about, I was just mentioning the Ukraine. They still are not, things are not going good there, especially the last couple of days. And I woke up this morning in another country, 2 other countries, or another country, or whoever's fighting today. Not great news to wake up to, but if you can help anybody dealing with wars, please do so. I want to go back to Ukraine. We need to get over this stuff. All right. My next show will be October 21st because Simon's busy doing CSharpCorner stuff. It'll be Eric Jensen. I'm excited to have Eric on the show for the first time. So I hope you join me back at the end of the month for that. That's going to be great. He's looking forward to it. He just told me he just told me this week. So I'm sure it'll be a fun episode. As always, help your fellow human by donating blood today, because all the blood banks that I'm aware of, are in a shortage, especially if you're in an area where they're having a war. So please take a little bit of your time and go donate some blood. I did this Wednesday. I had to put it off like 3+ times because I was sick the last month. And so I was finally able to do that this Wednesday. I was happy. I was so happy to get back and doing it. You can see me there. That's when I hit 17 gallons a couple months ago. It doesn't cost you anything but a little bit of your time, and you never know when you're going to need blood. So it's time to bank up some of that karma, if you ask me. With that, thanks so much for being watching the first episode of Rockin the Code World for this year. I please send me show guest ideas, what you like or don't like about the show, whatever, to dotNetDave@live.com. I haven't getting any emails from you. I feel you don't like the show, so send me some love. Let me know how I can improve the show, or maybe how you learned something cool on the show, whether programming or not. And with that, I'll see you on the 21st.